After the Middle East was hit by another year of crises in 2015, ECFR's MENA Forum recently held an event in our London offices to look at the causes and at Europe's role. Some believe that the EU made the mistake of underestimating the Syria crisis.
I would say it is the lack of full awareness that the Syrian crisis was serious enough for Europe to get involved and close enough to Europe for Europe not to ignore it. And I think the main problem has been that Europeans for a long time have waited for the United States to take the initiative and to take the lead. We know there is an administration out there in Washington that doesn't want to take the lead, and the Europeans thought, okay, if the US is not going to do it, well, we will just wait. And the problem here is they thought that the Syrian crisis could be contained. We can contain it and therefore basically ignore it. And the wake-up call came from people who basically walked into Europe or traveled by boat, as we know, or drowned in the Mediterranean, and revealed to the Europeans that Syria is part of their backyard, that this is an area that they cannot ignore. Unlike the US, they can't just turn their back on this crisis. And I feel that this is the moment of truth for Europeans. Are they just going to deal with refugees flowing into their countries, or are they going to look at the root cause of why these refugees have come?
An effective way to support Syria might be a stronger focus on its people.
Probably, I would say there's some obvious action to take on the ground, which is to ensure that the resilience that we see, which is remarkable from the Syrian population itself, whether it is inside Syria or in the neighboring countries where Syrians have taken refuge, that the financial support and all forms of support, which is developing their skills, developing their livelihoods, allowing them to survive in whether it's outside or inside Syria. This is one obvious approach and strategy, is to help the population stay put inside, help the population survive outside, develop skills that will be helpful in the future, when in the post-conflict period, when they will need to rebuild their country, and they will need all these capacities to rebuild their countries. Now, this is an area which doesn't require a lot of diplomacy. On the diplomatic level, I think the Europeans have a lot to offer on visions for a solution. And we hear all sorts of, in my view, sometimes irresponsible comments about, oh, Syria cannot be put together, the people there will not live together again, they will not want to be part of a one national entity. Well, the risk here for a politician when saying that is that he or she needs to say what the alternative is. Have we asked Syrians whether they still want to live together? The answer is yes, overwhelmingly yes. So the problem is a regime that has suppressed its population, some foreign countries that are supporting the regime suppressed, particularly now with air raids from Russia, and this is devastating the country even more than it was under only bombing from the regime. So we have there a position for the Europeans first to say where the problem is, where it lies exactly. It doesn't lie between Sunnis and Shias or Sunnis and Alawis in Syria. It lies between a government that is suppressing its population and countries that are supporting it, and a population that has taken up arms. Of course, we need to look at how we clean up the place. The vision for reconstruction is one that I think should draw on the history of Europe. Germany was rebuilt around its army and new national army, new security apparatus, and reconstruction schemes, and of course a Marshall Plan. This experience of Europe makes it unique in its ability to project and plan what can support this country to come back together, to rebuild itself. And I'm looking at security arrangements on the ground, as well as rebuilding the army and the security apparatus. This is one example of what Europe can bring. Its vision vision of a state. What is a state? What are the institutions that need to be restarted and reformed? And these, I think, better than any other country from the region or from the US even, Syria was built more on the European model, more on the French model. Its legal system is completely French, for example. So why don't we really use this proximity in terms of state building that the Europeans can bring to this country to put it back together?